Today's scripture is the next verse in Philippians 4, where we've been for about 4 weeks now. Verse 8, Philippians 4. Chris?
Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think of these things.
Other translations of what Chris just read, instead of brethren, uses the word brothers and sisters. Instead of honest, the word noble. Instead of just, the word right. Instead of admirable, it uses of good report. And some translations use the word excellent, and some use virtue. So there are a lot of different things there that Paul's talking about. This is the last of the 5 verses in Philippians that I've been talking about, which is verses 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Philippians 4. Those 5 verses are a whole lot for a Christian to know and do. And they really, really tell you how to live a good Christian life. If you ever have any doubts or any falling away or anything like that, go to Philippians 4 and read 4 through 8 over and over and try to be what Paul tells them to be in each of those verses. You know, this verse, out of those 5, it sort of woke me up, really, because it's telling you and me how to think. You know, the others tell you different things, how to act and how to be. This verse, Paul is telling you how to think. But the verse starts with the word finally. Finally means it's tied to the verses before it. So it's verse 4 through 8. Verse 8, you know, okay, finally. Now I'm going to finish up what I'm talking about here. That's one of my favorite words when I was little growing up, when the preacher said, finally. Okay, he's almost through. So Paul is almost through. He's getting ready to wrap up what he's talking about here. And then he starts with a greeting. He says, brethren. In some translations, he says, brothers and sisters. In other words, he's saying, family. You are my family. I think of you as family. That's what it means to me. And that's what he was telling the people in the church in Philippi, that you are my family. We're all in the family of Christ if we're Christians. And I think y'all know how I feel about family. About my biological family. I call my siblings at least every other week and chat with them for a few minutes. I call my aunt in Dallas every other week at least. And she loves it. She says, you're the only person that calls me just to talk. And we talk for 30 minutes usually. And that's how I feel about family. I try to keep in touch with them and keep up with them and find out how they're doing. Now, you know, they've all got problems and health problems that we discuss and I pray about for them, you know, and it's just family. That's what it is. And I also consider all of you family. This church is my family. We're a family, all of us, a family of Christians that celebrate together, not just on Sunday morning, but at other times when we get together for stuff. That yesterday, that was family. We sat around that dinner table after we got through eating those fish that we had just caught and cleaned and just talked for, 45 minutes. Just talked about each other and about different things and about this church. And some of these guys told me some secrets I can't tell their wives. That was not me. But it was a good family time. It reminded me of when I was little. My mom and daddy had 6 kids. Every night there were 8 people sitting around the table, and we talked. We ate dinner together, supper, we called it supper, and then we talked. That's what that reminded me of yesterday. A close-knit, closely held family of 6 guys just having a good time and talking about whatever came to mind. And we did. Nothing bad about anybody. Matter of fact, we made some good comments about a lot of people, you know, telling how good they were and things like that. It was just good family fellowship. And that's what Paul is telling these people in Philippi. You are my family. And this is what I want you to do. And then I got to looking at this verse and I'm thinking, the nerve of Paul telling me and them how to think. Telling them what to think about every day. Think, how can this guy, Paul, what authority does he have to tell people what to think about? And I got to thinking about Paul. What gave him the authority to do that? Y'all know that Paul was not one of the disciples. He didn't even know Jesus when he was alive. Paul doesn't come up till the 9th chapter of Acts, after Jesus is ascended to heaven and he's on the road to Damascus, and Jesus strikes him down and blinds him for 3 days and asks him, why are you persecuting me, Paul? And Paul was converted right there on that road to Damascus and became the #1 advocate of Christianity. The things that Paul did, the 3 missionary journeys that he took, all the churches that he established during those journeys, the letters that he wrote, his writings. You know, Paul wrote 13 books of the New Testament. And he never stood face to face and talked to Jesus, except the resurrected and risen Jesus. What gave him the authority to write all these things and tell people how to live and how to act and how to think? God did. Jesus did on that road to Damascus. Converted him, turned him into the #1 prophet for Jesus that ever lived, probably. The person that literally is responsible for so many of the things that we think about when we think Christianity today. Paul wrote them in the New Testament. You want to learn a tenet of New Testament, you can go to one of the 13 books he wrote, and you can find probably in there, this is what Paul wrote. This is what we practice. This is what we believe as Christians today. So does Paul have the right to tell me what to think? Sure, I think he does. And he did. He's often called Saint Paul and Paul the Apostle. And he is often thought of as the #1 apostle and the #1 person for carrying on the Christian church and shaping Christian theology. I can't think of many other people that I would like to have telling me how to think. And we need to consider how we think. And that's what Paul is telling them in this verse, verse 8. We need to think. That reminds me of something that happened to me not too long ago about thinking, about people and things. I had a new dentist. And I went to the dentist. She was a woman. I was sitting in her waiting room and her diploma was hanging on the wall. And I looked at her name and I said, I went to high school with someone with that exact same name. I wonder if it's her. Now in high school, you realize this was a while ago, in the early 70s, she was a tall redhead with green eyes. She was beautiful. She's a couple years older than me, but I had a crush on her. You know how you ninth graders have a crush on the juniors and seniors. So that was her. And I thought this has got to be her. Well, I went back to the room, and the little girl comes in and does her stuff, and then the dentist walks in, and she's tall, but she's got thinning gray hair and a bun up on top of her head. She's wearing glasses, wrinkles around her eyes, and I said, no, that ain't her. Can't be her. This woman looks too old. So we get through, and I said, did you happen to go to Dubach High School? And she said, yes, I did. And I said, when? And she said, in the early 70s. And I said, well, I was there then. And this aging, balding, gray-headed woman wearing glasses looked at me and said, well, what did you teach?
Is that a true story?
No.
I didn't believe it.
Oh, man. But Paul is telling us how to think. The last 4 words of that verse. Think about such things. Think on such things. That's what he's telling us. How are we supposed to think? What are we supposed to be thinking about? Paul is pretty straightforward in this verse in telling us. He tells us we should think about what's true, what's noble, what's right, what's pure, what's lovely, what's admirable, what's excellent, and what's praiseworthy. Those are the things that should be in our mind. In other words, get your mind out of the gutter. That's what Paul is telling us. He's told us in these preceding 4 verses, 4, 5, 6, and 7, he's told us that we should be joyous, we should not worry, we should be gentle, we should pray, we should be thankful, we should be at peace in what we do and think. And now he's telling them how to be at peace with what you think about. Create a godly mindset is what he's telling them. It's all in how you think. Do that. We're told all those other things to be. Now he's telling us what to think about in order to continuously be that way. He's given you a final good roadmap on how to carry out what he's been talking about. It's all in how you think. Now, when I first started getting it, on Sunday evenings, I get my Bible out and I look at it. And I decide then, pretty much, that's when I decide what my sermon's going to be about the next Sunday. This one is, I've been preparing for this one for several weeks, just like the last 4 weeks. The other day, I told Billy Ruth that I know what I'm going to preach about next Sunday already. It's already been revealed to me. But when I looked at this verse, it actually made me a little emotional. Because I thought, first of all, well, that's going to be hard to present. But I've started this session of Philippians 4. I need to finish it. I don't often present emotions when I'm preparing my sermons and practicing them. But this one did. It sort of got to me. Many nights I stay awake going over my sermons in my head, thinking about what I'm going to say. Many times I'll write a sermon, and even after I print my final version, I change it 5 more times, and I change it when I'm sitting right here when I present it to you, often. But this one got to me, and when I put it on paper and I printed it, I think it was Thursday morning, it was ready. And I had to make very little changes to it, because I don't normally get I got a little emotional about this one. It came to me. I do show sometimes up here a little emotion with y'all, and that's good. But this one I did just getting ready for it. Lying in bed at night before last, I woke at 4 o'clock Saturday morning. Billy said it's because I was worried about going over to the farm. No, it wasn't. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about, how do I think? What do I think about every day? When I'm with other people, what do I think about? What's going through my mind when I'm lying in bed at night? What's the process that I go through in thinking stuff out? It's what Paul was telling us to do. And these words had a pretty good impact on me. They kept me awake. Now, I slept good last night after we got home. We were tired. I was. I slept really good last night because I was ready. Because I already knew it's here. It's what Paul wanted me to say, and in a few minutes I'm going to sum it up in just a few words. Pretty simple. But one thing that got to me about this verse is that it is so countercultural, it's so opposite the way the world operates today. What Paul is telling you to think about is completely different from what the world is telling us to worry about and think about all the time. Turn on the news. You'll see stories about conflicts and anger and hatred and injustices all over the world, even in Louisiana and Jackson Parish, That's what they want you to think about. Go to social media. It won't be long before you get sucked into the next great turmoil in someone's life, like the CEO of that company this past week that I've seen, I think, 183 times on Facebook and other places. You get sucked into that, and then you find out that that's what you're thinking about all the time. And then there's numerous lies that come out and go along with all that stuff. And you, oh, I wonder if that's true. And you say, well, that must be true. It's on Facebook. It's on the internet. It must be true. You engage in conversations with people. And you talk to them. And you realize that they're hurting. They're broken. They haven't lived up to expectations of other people around them. And you start worrying about them and thinking about that instead of thinking about the good. You do that about people that live with you, your spouses. You worry about them and think about their troubles and things, and when you should be thinking about the good. What can I do to make this a happy moment? The focus of so many is on, the things that are going on in the world around us. And this world, believe it, it's spiraling out of control because of those things. Since the fall of mankind over 6,000 years ago, this world has been spiraling out of control. It's just what happens. God created something that was perfect, and man betrayed God and ended that perfect life that he had prepared for them, and we're having to live in it today. Paul has given us a way to maybe get back to some of that. I'm almost through with the first book of a 3-book series written by Brian Schaefer, and the first book occurs in heaven before earth was created. Lucifer and all his angels are still in heaven, and it's about Lucifer starting to plot to take over. And then when he realizes he can't take over the Most High, God, his plot is, well, God just created this new universe, this earth. I'm going to take that over. And that's what this book is about, how Lucifer was plotting to do all that, plotting against God, thinking that he could accomplish things without God and without God's knowledge. And we're doing that today, aren't we? We can't accomplish things without God, and you know very well you're not ever going to accomplish anything without God's knowledge, because he is omniscient. He is all-knowing. A lot today in this world is happening just like Brian Schaefer was writing about in this book 1, and I'm looking for. Book 2 is when Lucifer gets to earth, and book 3 is the final battle when Lucifer is defeated. They're good, but Brian Schaefer is a very good writer. So much like the earth today. It's heartbreaking to see what this world has come to. So many people think that they can do things without God's help, without God's knowledge, and without even the need for God. You're probably wondering, when is he going to get back to that verse and tell us how to think, aren't you? That's all part of this. We dwell on the sin and the brokenness around us. That's what we're thinking about now. There are a lot of problems in this world. I've been thinking about them. The events that are going on, the things that are going on, the troubles people are having, the conflicts. And it just goes over and over through your mind. And you get to a point sometime where it's difficult to shut your brain off, isn't it? When you start thinking about those things. It's difficult to think about the good, the pure, the lovely, the righteous, when all this other stuff is presented to us over and over and over again. I don't hardly watch news anymore on television. Every once in a while I watch Channel 8, 6 o'clock at night, mainly to see the sports section and maybe the weather. But Philippians 4:8 challenges us to do just the opposite of letting those things take over our mind. It encourages us to dwell on the good things, to be optimistic, cheery, not so much as to be obnoxious, but not to really ignore the problems in other people's lives in the world. He's telling us not to dwell on those things. Don't let them keep you awake at night. Don't let them make you worry. Instead of focusing on the lies and everything that's going on in our minds, he tells us to focus on what's true. Instead of thinking about the world's evil and the world's immorality, Paul tells us to think about what is honorable and what is morally excellent. Instead of thinking about the injustice in the world, he tells us to pursue holiness and purity and seek justice and righteousness, not corruption. Instead of thinking about what's ugly and what's marred by sin, Paul tells us to look for what is lovely. Instead of stuff that's unworthy of your attention, you're invited to focus and think about what is truly praiseworthy and commendable. You look around this room, you see other people sitting in here, family members, church members, people you may not know very well. Most of us know each other pretty well. Think about what is commendable in them, what is lovely in them, what is praiseworthy in them. Think about their attributes that are good and kind and gentle and loving. We've all got problems, so let's not worry about those problems. Let's think about the good stuff. That's a Christian mind. That's what you should be thinking of. We don't have to carry the weight of the problems of the people in our lives and the problems of the world. You know, your spouse, you take care of her. You love them. If she cooks, you wash the dishes, or vice versa, or you help. And we all got some little problems, and we talk about them, and we do worry about them. That's human nature. But don't let it consume you. Think about the good things, the good times you've had together. Terry, I bet you laughed a little when Roy fell and hurt his knee again, didn't you? No, no, that's one of those times when you should have worried about him and taken care of him. But now it's well, he's better. That's great. Think about that. You know, I had cancer several years ago, but I go every 3 months and I get a great report. I think about that. And the doctor asked me, he says, well, what are we going to do now? We need to do this. I said, no, doc, this is working. I'm happy. I'm going to stay right where I am. You look for a home for months and months, and you can't find one you really just fits. And then you find it. Stop thinking about you had to live with your daughter for several months or a couple of months. Now you've got a great house in a beautiful place with a pond. That's what you should be thinking about. You know, Chris, even though you have to work on some Saturdays you don't. You work on Saturdays saying, well, you know, I made a little extra money this week. I can give a little more to the church, or I can buy my grandmama something, or what, you know. Think about the good parts of it, not the fact that, gummit, I got to work again Saturday. I'm off on Fridays, but my phone rings all day long. I don't let it bother me. I answer it, I do what they say, and I go back to loving my wife and my life. You think about right now in your life, you have to deal with lies, evil, immorality, injustice, corruption, all the sins of the world. But do you know what in your life is true, honest, just, pure, lovely, of good report, virtuous, praiseworthy? Well, I can tell you one thing that is all of those. It's Jesus Christ. When Jesus Christ said, it is finished, he meant all that sin was finished. He finished it for us. And now Paul is telling us that we can think about all these good things because Jesus took care of the bad things in our lives. And that's what Paul is telling us. Now, my dear family in Christ, my church members, I pray that you will find peace in God in every day of your life. I pray that you will dwell on the things that are true, the things that are honorable, the things that are just, the things that are pure, the things that are lovely. I pray that you will dwell on the things that are commendable in those around you, morally excellent, and those that are praiseworthy. Dwell on those things. That's what you're told to do in this verse. And finally, do not, because you don't have to, carry the burdens of the world. You know, at the end of verse 5, Paul said, the Lord is near, and he's there waiting to help you and guide you in what you're thinking about. If you pray for the peace of God, you will find that the God of peace is with you. So what do you think? Amen.
Amen.